Greetings, children of chaos. Today we're painting Tzaangor for Warhammer 40,000. So flex your blessed mutations and let's do some hobby.
So today we're going to be painting the Tzaangor out of the old Thousand Sons Combat Patrol. So the Tzaangor have a sprue with the actual Tzaangor themselves, and then you get these upgrade kits with chainsaws and auto pistols. So I'm going to start off by clipping off the bodies. The bodies come in two separate parts, and there's a few different types, so you don't want to get them mixed up, so I clip them off one at a time. Just give them a bit of a clean with a blunt knife. There's a mold line that runs around the edges, and then we're just going to clean that up and then glue the two halves together with some Citadel plastic glue. So once the main bodies are there, you can put the different armaments on. So this example is Tzaangor blades, but yeah, you can also use the auto pistols, or you can use the sword and shield, and then you attach one of the necks to the back. So there's a few different necks, and they're all compatible with each other, all the arms and all the necks. And then there's also a bunch of heads and horns, and they're also all compatible with each other. So you just select one of each, glue them together, and then you just glue that into the neck so it slots in like so. So you can also notice on this model I've removed one of the Tzaangor blades because I just want to do a bit of a conversion. So I'm going to actually equip him with a chainsword, and then I'm going to cut off the other Tzaangor blade and replace it with a Beastman banner that I had lying around, just to give me a few different looking banners so they're not all the same. So once that's done, we're going to start painting, and I'm going to spray him in Wraithbone and use Griff Charger Grey for the main skin. So I just take a decent sized brush and just use the Griff Charger Grey and put it all over the skin areas. I can be quite thick with this, so it runs into all the crevices and all the muscles. And I vary it up a little bit with some contrast medium. So some of the models I thin down the Griff Charger Grey with the contrast medium, and that will give a lighter kind of hue with the skin. So I just select a few of the Tzaangors out of the pack for that. And then also the opposite way, I'm going to make some of them darker by, once the first coat of Griff Charger Grey is on, I'm going to add a second coat. So that just gives me a bit more variety. Next, I'm going to use some Acalian Green mixed with contrast medium, and I'm going to add a bit more variety by adding some wet blending to some of their limbs. So I put some of the thinned down Acalian Green around the hoof, and then I use more contrast medium to just immediately wet blend that up the leg. So you just want to be pretty quick between adding the Acalian Green and then doing the blending, because contrast paint stains quite quickly. So you want to keep that paint moving so you don't get some unsightly stains. So you can see I'm going to do some of that with some of their arms as well, and just randomly do this between all the models. Not all of them have all of their limbs with this effect, just some have one leg and one arm, some have both, but just gives a little bit more variety to the Tzaangors because I want to have a lot, and this kind of effect just adds a bit more uniqueness to each model. So now once that's done, I use Black Legion, and I'm going to paint all of the metal parts, so their armor and the little trinkets and weapons. Just go over all of that with Black Legion. And now I'm going to paint them in silver. So I start off with a base of lead belcher, and then I just paint that on just like a heavy kind of dry brush, just leaving some black in the crevices, so everything gets done in lead belcher. Then I go back with some Nuln oil and just shade it back down, so just a pretty heavy coat. And then I use some Necron compound to do some dry brushing on the raised edges just to give it a bit of a shinier highlight. So that's what it looks like with the silver done. Now I'm going to use Agaros Dunes, another contrast paint, to do the gold part. So I just apply this over the silver and it ends up giving a really nice gold effect. So it takes a little bit of time. There's a little bit of trim around all the armor, and then I also do some of the details of the moldings of the gun and the chainsword and that, all in this Agaros Dunes to give it a gold effect. So that's what the end result looks like. I quite like it. Next, I'm going to use some Acalian Green in contrast medium to do a glaze around the corners of all the silver parts, just to give it like an ethereal kind of glow, so it's not just plain armor. It's got a bit of a effect to it. So that's what it looks like, all the metal parts done. Next, I'm going to use some Wraith Bone to clean up any of the other parts that I've still yet to paint. So the hooves and the horns, beak, and any parts that I'm going to subsequently paint a different color. So next, I'm going to do the tabards. So I use Techless Blue first to give them a base coat. So just be a bit careful, make sure that you're not painting over any of the silver parts. I'm also going to paint the banner in this blue too. So Techless Blue first, and then I use a bit of thinned down Thalasar Blue to go over the top, and that ends up giving quite a rich royal kind of blue because of that Techless Blue base coat. If you just use Thalasar Blue directly over Wraithbone, it's got more like an electric blue, so I prefer doing it this way. Next, I'm going to use Black Templar to paint the feathers or whatever they are on the body, and then I also use that to paint some of the leather parts like the scabbard and the handle of their knives. So next, I'm going to use Wildwood and Abaddon Black to paint all their hooves and horns and beak. So first I saturate those areas with the Wildwood, so really thick there, so I get some natural variations between light and dark brown. So just go over all of those pieces there. And then once that's nice and dry, I then dry brush some Abaddon Black onto the end parts of those. So it gives kind of like a blending effect similar to what we did with the limbs, except dry brushing instead of wet blending. Now I'm going to use Skeleton Horn to go around and paint all of the skulls. Most of them have at least one bird skull. Then I use some Flesh Terrors Red to paint all of the gems that are all over them too. I don't go and do the full gemstone effect, I just paint them all in Flesh Terrors Red, saturate it so it gives kind of a glowing effect. Next, I'm going to use some Gore Grunter Fur to paint some of the smaller leather straps, so some other leather straps on their body, and then also for the standard bearer, the little stitching holding the standard together, and there's also a bunch of leather straps holding the skulls onto the crossbar of the standard. I could have just done these in black, but I wanted to have a second leather color. Now I'm going to use Iyanden Yellow to paint their eyes, and now I'm going to use a bunch of different colors for all of their hair and tentacles. So I want to mix these up and again create a lot more variety, get away from that uniform look. So some of them I'm going to do in Black Templar, some of them I'm going to do in Shyish Purple, and I'm going to do some more wet blending just to vary up some of those tentacles. I also use some purples and pinks for some of the ones with open mouths, their gums and tongues, and a few of the ones with feathers. I do the feathers like some different shades of purple, and this is actually Caribou Crimson, I think. Lastly, I use some Nihilic Oxide to paint the runes in some of the auto pistols, and I'm going to use some Wraithbone to just paint some random rune looking things on the standard. So lastly, I'm just going to base them and put some pink tufts on their base, and after that they're ready to go. So I'm quite happy with how these guys turned out. They look pretty cool and they don't take too long to paint. My aim is to eventually have a full warp meld pack with 120 Tzaangor, so I've got a few left to go. So hopefully that helps, and thanks for watching.